Yeah, there continues to be this slight bit of hissing sound of the fan running in the background, which unfortunately you have to live with because this is here about 36 to 40 degrees centigrade in the room and I'm sweltering hot wet. We must continue, right? So here we go. So what's next up on resisting change and where does that come from? Prioritizing social rationality turns out to be an issue. Knowledge resistance and resistance to change are also driven by our fundamental tendency to prioritize social rationality over all other rationalities, even if it is entirely irrational in the conventional sense of an individual to look at photos from the inaugurations of President Obama and Trump and claim the latter had more people attending. It may be completely irrational from a social point of view if that individual's social status or even membership in an important group may be in jeopardy if not adhering to the mainstream view of that group. Of course, Trump also has other tricks where he will say he will give you special status when he is elected if you support his statements, or that you will be put in jail or you will face his wrath if you don't conform. So the same human need to be the same human need to belong was also behind much of the irrational reluctance of certain groups to wear a face mask or get vaccinated during the COVID-19 pandemic, and you know this had become a big issue. If you don't take a vaccine and don't wear a mask, you are also putting my life in jeopardy. But if you say that's your belief and you are not going to wear, then how do you deal with it? This is obviously another wicked problem with no solution. Belonging to a group and having social status in that group are primarily human needs only, trumped by physiological and safety needs essential for survival, like wearing a helmet. Many people say, I want to ride free and not wear a helmet, but when you crash and you need emergency care, you have to be penalized for not wearing, right? Our species is genetically hardwired to be social since group membership and status have provided significant evolutionary advantages. We have thus evolved to be sensitive to being socially excluded from our group, since that would have had dire consequences for our survival and reproduction as well, and to desire social status within the group, since that increased such chances of survival and reproduction. This perspective explains the persistent importance of other people's opinions of us. Mindfulness keeps saying you must not worry about what others think, and yet often it's a very critical thing to worry about what other people think. It also explains why most people fear public speaking, which is picked up in an amusingly accurate joke by Seinfeld. Jerry Seinfeld. Seinfeld show was one of my favorites, the only show on TV that I watched quite often, only in reruns, but nonetheless, very funny guy, very funny show. According to most studies, people's number one fear is public speaking. Number two is death. Death is number two. Now this means to the average person, if you have to go to a funeral, you're better off in the casket than doing the eulogy. Just think about it. We are so scared of public speaking that we consider it the number one fear as opposed to death. And if we go to a funeral, we would rather die and be in the casket than to give a eulogy in public, right? So the human tendency to prioritize social rationality has severe consequences on humankind's ability to address our contemporary sustainability challenges, not only because it currently drives knowledge resistance, but also because it keeps the vast majority of the main polluters of the global population from wanting to change their environmentally disastrous behaviors. As long as social status is essentially equated with consumption and you do not have to watch much television, right? So then you are okay with the majority of the main polluters, so it depends on what information you are getting, how you are processing it, and how it conforms or not with your cognitive bias, and so on and so forth, right? So As long as social status is essentially equated with consumption and you do not have to watch much television, read many magazines, or glance at many social media accounts for the so-called influencers to realize that this is the case. So people can become very rich selling toys, shoes, everything. So our current disastrous path towards doom will be maintained as long as we allow influencers to rule the world. So here is something. Most influencers encourage blind consumerism, since the most common way to earn money is to get paid by the companies to promote their product. So some poor woman is being used here in the prop, but nonetheless, you do not have to be religious to see parallels between consumerist lifestyles of the affluent and worship of Mammon or Haman, warned against in Christian and Muslim traditions. As long as consumption is the primary process through which individuals gain social status amongst their peers, we are in trouble. So there are other ideas of intrinsic qualities and extrinsic qualities. People who love to have this image of being powerful, good looking, well dressed, rich, and so on, versus intrinsic characters who stand up for the environment, for sustainability, for reducing consumption, and so on. So other norms and values need to be revitalized, not only within the minority groups of environmentally and social justice minded people that may already be on their way, but amongst the general population. The trick, of course, is that the so-called environmentally and social justice minded people are not always as careful, because they may be vegans to show that they are environmentally friendly, but they may be driving a big car or not worrying about other things. So you need to have a complete portfolio of your carbon footprint to make sure that you are living within some limit, and maybe someday you will have a limit of some personal footprint for everybody, so that you can adjust your portfolio. When you want to travel, you offset it by not eating meat, or if you eat meat, you don't travel, and so on and so forth. So it's a complicated issue, and we cannot simplify it as social rationality that can be spread to everybody, right? So lack of will or resources can also significantly impact resistance to change. Of course, willpower is a limited resource. A poor person may start the morning with great intentions to be environmentally friendly, but survival may drive other factors to do things that are not environmentally friendly. For real change to materialize, the involved group of actors must have vision, skills, incentives, resources, and an action plan. Having skills, incentives, resources, and an action plan but no vision of what to accomplish together leads to confusion that undermines change. What do we mean? So here is 5 requisites for managing complex change. You need vision, skills, incentive, resources, and action plan. So this can lead to change. If you don't have a vision, it can lead to confusion. If you don't have skills, it can cause anxiety. If you don't have incentives, then it can cause resistance. If you don't have resources, then obviously you will be frustrated. And if you don't have an action plan, then there will be many false starts. You'll be ineffective and inefficient, right? So having a vision, incentives, resources, and an action plan but inadequate skills leads to anxiety amongst the involved actors that cripple change. Having everything in place but incentives or not having incentives such as rewards, recognition, and celebrations leads at best to slow, gradual change that may take years to accomplish. Lacking the necessary resources such as money, time, and equipment leads to frustration and the change left undone. Finally, having a vision, skills, incentives, and resources but no action plan to accomplish the change, the actors are likely to experience a lot of false starts, wrong directions, coming back, restarting, taking off in various directions, only to realize that change is not materializing due to important components being overlooked, in which case you may be wasting a lot of resources, time, and energy as well, leading to frustration and resistance. In short, a lack of will and resources may exacerbate resistance to change by generating confusion, anxiety, lack of incentives, frustration, and false starts. So that's a good point to stop, I think. Yeah, maybe I'll do this in the next podcast because I am feeling a little thirsty. This is only about 10 minutes, but we'll have an additional podcast before we move to the next topic. So we are in prioritizing social rationality. So we'll make a few more points in the next podcast. Okay.